Still waiting on the front springs. The shop actually just called and they said I'm gonna need a pickle beer. Not only am I gonna need a pickle beer, but I'm gonna need a good one. So these are Toyo Open Country RTs. They're 35-inch tires. I put these on years ago and they've been great. They have a fair amount of tread left. The thing is, they're rated for 45,000 miles. I've got close to 50 on them. They're getting close to 5 years old and they recently started to get really noisy. So it's time to replace the tires. And at some point years ago, I was in a parking lot somewhere. I saw another Raptor and I just thought it looked really good. I was like, what is it about that truck that makes it look good? And it turned out they had 37-inch tires on it. So today, if we're gonna go ahead and pay to replace the tires, I'd like to go up to 37-inch tires. The thing is, to do that, you have to lift the truck in order to fit them and be able to steer. I mean, you wanna steer, right? So to fit 37-inch tires, you need a 3-inch lift. And so we have today, these are Geiser 3-inch lift springs. And what these are gonna do is these springs are going to replace the springs on these front coilovers right here. And for the front, that's all you need to do. For the back, we have these leaf springs right here. Now, part of the challenge is we have the winch on the front of the truck and behind the bumper here is a big metal winch plate thing. And so what happened is I put a leveling kit on this truck long ago. It was an 1.25 inch leveling kit. But what happened is I did the leveling kit and then I put the winch on and then it sank down 3/4 of an inch. So our 1.5 inch leveling kit didn't really get us all the way up there because of the winch. And I'm expecting the front springs to also sag in a similar manner. So these are Icon rear leaf springs. A lot of people use Devers. The thing is, these are adjustable. So if you notice, we have these extra leaves right here. And the way this works is right now, these are set up to give you a 1-inch lift over factory. If you replace, I think it's the 3rd leaf down in here with this leaf that they gave you, it gives you a 2.5-inch lift. And then if you just add this leaf into the leaf pack, that gives you a 3-inch lift. So since I don't know exactly how much the front is going to sag down with those new springs in the front, the adjustable leaves made sense. I think I'm gonna start with the 2.5-inch lift, and then if we need to go up, we can, but I kind of doubt it. I think 2.5 inches is gonna be good for the back. The front, I'm hoping it doesn't sag down too much for the 37s. We're probably gonna have to do a little bit of fender trimming somewhere, but that's to be expected. And today we're gonna get started with the front of the truck. It's supposed to be a lot easier than the back of the truck. And we're going to need to find a shop that can put these springs on for us. I've seen a lot of videos of people who buy like the cheap Amazon spring compressors, or they'll use the ones you can rent from AutoZone. And some people get it done, but they almost die. So we're gonna get these off, put them in a different car, take them to a shop somewhere, have them swap out the springs for us, and then get them back in and see what we're dealing with. So for comparison purposes, real quick, our front fender is starting out almost exactly 40 inches off the ground, and our rear fender is about 40 3/4. So already higher in the rear, so we're not gonna need as much lift in the rear, I don't think. So we'll go ahead and get the truck up in the air here. Based on other videos I've seen, I don't think the front will be too hard, but you do need, if you're gonna do this, a 27 and a 30 millimeter socket, which were sizes I did not have, but now I do. The rest of them are pretty standard, so here we go. All right, we got it. Really wasn't too hard. The hardest parts were, one, well, we sheared off my extension. Yeah, so the main bolt down here that goes to the bottom of the shock, that's torqued to 250 foot-pounds. So if you have a cheater bar, you can get that off no problem, but you don't have old extensions, I guess, that will just break on you. And then the other part that was a challenge is, well, these bolts on the top, there's just not a lot of clearance there. Those are kind of a pain, but they came out. And then getting the shock out itself, you have to put some downward pressure on this because it's kind of like spring loaded, you know? So I've seen people on the internet just like struggling with that, having a friend like push down while they pull and all sorts of stuff. I put a ratchet strap on the bottom of over there, and then on this passenger side it's still connected, and so I was able to, you know, just put some force on it that way, and it pulled it down at the same time, and then I was able to just kind of pop it right out of there, no problem. Oh, and this ratchet strap here, that's just to support the knuckle here so it doesn't pull on the brake lines while we're working on stuff. So passenger side should be pretty similar. I'm told just these bolts up here are a little bit harder to get to. You have a little less clearance, but apart from that, same sort of thing. Then we'll go get the springs swapped out and put them back on. All right, so the front springs are gone. They're off at a local shop somewhere. You know, it's funny, you watch these other YouTube videos, they're like, oh, if a shop has a spring compressor, they can just do it for you in 30 minutes, just drop by. Apparently not in my area. So actually, I started with 4-wheel parts. I figured they, you know, must do this stuff all the time. They said, no, we farmed that out to another local shop. So I called them, they didn't pick up. Called like 8 more shops. 3/4 of them don't pick up. The ones that do pick up, they can't get to your 30-minute springs for at least 2 weeks. And so eventually I found a place, they'll have it done for me in 2 days. So what we're gonna do now is tackle the rear springs. I did wanna be able to get the front springs on there, see how high it was sitting, see exactly how high we need to go in the back, but we're not gonna be able to do that. So instead, we're gonna risk it all. We're gonna go ahead and guess that we need 2.5 inches in the back. So I'm gonna take these extra leaves right here, swap them out with the ones that are in here, and then we will get these in the back of the truck. So a few things you do need if you're doing this is, so your bump stops are not long enough, so you can get extended bump stops, or I ordered my stuff from Off-Road Alliance, not sponsored, that's just where I ordered it from, and so they make these bump stop plates, and so what these do is they give you this little extra room here, so you don't have to change your bump stops, you don't have to extend them, you just put these on whenever you put the springs on, and these contact the bump stops sooner than they would have otherwise contacted the axle. The Icon kit comes with some hardware here. The most important part is one of your leaf spring bolts you're gonna have to cut off. So the fuel tank on, I believe it's the driver's side, yeah, you can't get the bolt out without cutting it off unless you want to take the fuel tank out, which I don't really want to do. So they give you extra bolts because they know you're gonna need them. So we're gonna have to get those bolts out, cut one, put the new ones in. Shouldn't be too hard, but you know, famous last words. So here we go. Now, before I started this video, I was like, we're just installing springs. Like, how hard can this be? There's no way I'm gonna have to drink a pickle beer, and here we are. Oh, it's so terrible. So, some of you probably noticed whenever I switched over that, I don't know, shackle thing up there, over to this, the other spring, which is now in the truck, I put it on the wrong side. There's a front, this is the front, like all this business going on up in here. That intricate one, that's the front, that's the back. So Really not a big deal. I don't even have this bolted in yet. Well, there's one bolt in back there, but the problem is getting the old leaf spring out. It's really not too heavy, not too hard. This one is substantially heavier. It takes a bit of doing to get it in there, especially by yourself. And so now I have the pleasure of doing it again, because I have to get this one out, flip it around, put it back in. And I will say, if you're putting these plates on for the bump stops, do it after you get the spring in. It was just falling off all over the place when I was trying to get it in there. So what I'll do is get this out, flip it around, get the spring back in there, slide this underneath, get everything bolted up, and then that should be it for the driver's side. Right after I finish this pickle beer. Oh, why did they even make these? And there you have the passenger side. So both sides are done now. Everything is loosely bolted together. The instructions say what you're supposed to do at the end is put the wheels and tires on, let everything down, and then tighten everything up to torque spec. Problem is, still don't have the front springs back yet. So without those, we're not putting this on all four wheels, I guess. So a couple of things about installing these. So repacking the rear leaves, not as involved as some people make you think. I think some other channels, they've had really hard times with them. The thing is, if you put like a C-clamp like here and there, and then you just tighten them down, like the leaves go right back together. It's not a problem. They don't explode when you take them apart, anything like that. Nothing to be afraid about. One thing I am kind of afraid about though, if you look like right here, the exhaust is touching the leaf springs on both sides. I'm guessing once we get some weight on here, they'll like kind of go up and then clear the exhaust, but that's something I'm gonna need to watch out for. But nobody else has had a problem with that, so that may just be we need to get some weight on it. It should be fine. The story that the passenger side is easier than the driver's side is completely false. So the driver's side was supposed to be harder because the fuel tank was in the way, that one bolt, except on this side you've got this muffler right here. It does the exact same thing. You have no clearance over there. You have to cut the bolt off here too. So they give you 2 bolts in the kit, which is fine. You just have to spend the time to cut the bolts off. So count on like at least 1 reciprocating blade per bolt. It takes a while to get through them. And speaking of the exhaust, so some other channels, they say you need to take like the rear part of the exhaust system off in order to get all this stuff in. Completely false. You don't need to at all. It'd probably give you like a little bit more working room, but the only thing I had to take out was the spare tire, and that's because one of the nuts up in here is like over on this side, and so you physically can't get to it without taking the spare tire out. So really, for rear leaf springs, just remove the spare tire, and you should have enough room if you have enough determination. But all in all, not too bad. Just take some time. And if you're wondering why I'm working on the ground when I have a lift here, the thing is, these springs, I think I said this before, they're super heavy. I don't want to be lifting them up above my head trying to get them in. So that's why we're down here with the floor jack, raising and lowering the rear axle instead of using, some other bigger lift. But anyway, hopefully this front spring should be done tomorrow. All right, next morning, the back is all buttoned up. Everything is loosely assembled together. The tires are back on. We're ready to put it down on the ground in the back. Still waiting on the front springs. The shop actually just called and they said I'm gonna need a pickle beer. Not only am I gonna need a pickle beer, but I'm gonna need a good one. So we're gonna go with, spicy's really bad, but you know what? This is the one Alan dropped off when he put his face in my tree, and I said I was saving it for a really good fail, and this is a really good fail. Just as bad as the last one, there's just more of it. So I mentioned before that I did the leveling kit on the front years ago, and apparently I forgot something. So the shop took the shocks apart, they took the leveling collar off, and what I forgot is that in order to put the leveling collar on, I had to remove the stock clips that hold up the bottom spring cup. So the shop has everything apart, and they have no way to put my new springs on without the leveling collar, which you can't do. You can't put a leveling collar on 3-inch springs. So we're kind of stuck now. Another fine beverage. Oh. So luckily I did find a place that has the little C-clips for the shocks. They sell them. They have them in stock. I ordered them overnight, and this is now a $60 pickle beer. It doesn't taste like a $60 pickle beer. So just got the tracking information. They should be here by noon tomorrow. So hopefully tomorrow we can get the clips to the shop, get the shop to assemble the springs, put the springs back on the truck, and get this thing on the ground. Good news, got the clips. Bad news, it looks like they're out to lunch. All right, good news. New springs are on the shocks here. Bad news, I had to pay $215 to get that done. However, the guys at the shop said these were the beefiest springs they had ever seen, and they broke their $3,000 spring compressor putting these on. So I may have come out ahead in that transaction. The other bad part is they told me they didn't really get these lined up right. So the 3 bolts on the top, or studs, they have to go in a certain spot, right? And then that means the bottom part has to line up in a certain spot in the lower control arm. So they said just put the top in first and then grab a pipe wrench and tweak it. If these springs are so strong that they broke their spring compressor, I'm not sure how easy that's gonna be, but we're gonna give it a shot here. My goal for tonight is just to get these in, get the truck on the ground, and tomorrow we can get all the bolts torqued to the right spec. Or maybe I'll do it tonight if I'm feeling ambitious, but we'll see how hard this is. Truck is down, all the bolts are torqued up, except for the wheels. Don't let me forget to do that. But before we go get an alignment and tires, I want to go ahead and measure to see exactly how much we got. So if you remember the front fender, we started at 40 inches off the ground. And we are now at 42.5. So we got 2.5 inches of lift from a 2.5 inch lift kit. So, wait, no, that was the rear. The front was 3 inches, but we had the winch, so we knew it was gonna sag a little bit. So 2.5 inches of lift from 3-inch lift springs in the front with the winch on it. And the back, I'm not gonna lie, the back looks high. Let's see what it is. So the back was 40 3/4 when we started. And now we're at 44, a little over 44.5. So that means we got 3 3/4 inches of lift out of a 2.5 inch lift spring. Something tells me that hasn't settled yet. I did jump on the back, but we're gonna drive this around a little bit. We're gonna get an alignment. We're gonna get the tires. We're gonna do another measurement and see where we are, because I think the back needs to go down some more. And we're gonna get the Raptor aligned as diesel. Should be fine though, right? All right, good news, bad news. Good news is the truck is aligned. Everything is where it's supposed to be. Bad news is the front has now settled a little bit, and it makes the back look even more ridiculous. Like, look at that. So our front fender has now settled to right about 42 inches, and our back fender is still way up here at 44.5 inches. That fell. Now I did realize those bump stop plates that we put under there, those are giving us an extra about 1/4 inch that we weren't planning on. But that's still like way too high. The only thing I can think of is the instructions say they give you a 2.5 inch lift over the factory height. So maybe there's a chance that my truck has settled over the years in the rear. I've done a lot of towing with it. Maybe the leaf springs got compressed in the rear, and so now we are truly 2.5 inches over factory, but that's way too high compared to where we were at. So I think what I might do tonight is take that leaf that we replaced out, put the old leaf back in. That'll take us down to a 1 inch lift in the rear. And so if we take 1.5 inches out of the back, it goes from 44.5 down to 43, and that will be just a 1/2 inch above the front, almost level, should be right where we want it to be. So it sounds like a big pain in the butt. The thing is, you can change the leaves out with the springs on the truck. It's not supposed to be too hard. Just take the wheel off, maybe take the shocks off. We're gonna get a C-clamp on there, and well, let's just do it. Way better. Let's go get some tires. So actually earlier when I said that bottom bolt on the front shock was torqued to 250 pounds, I was wrong. So I looked up the specs. I got that 250 pound number off of another YouTube channel, so don't believe anything you see on YouTube. But according to Ford, it's 406 pounds, not 250 pounds. Thing is, my torque wrench only goes up to 250. So right now they're torqued at 250. It's not like they're gonna come off. If anything, apparently what happens is if you don't tighten them enough, you get like a rattle or a clunk in the front end whenever the shock moves independent of the control arm. So I'll listen for the clunk. If we get it, I guess I'll go find a torque wrench that can do 406 pounds. We're talking like a dump truck torque wrench or something. I don't know where you even get those. And wouldn't you know it, it's me from the future, and I did get the clunk. So you don't get it just driving around town, but if you hit like a big enough dip with enough speed, it goes clunk clunk. So we need to fix that. So my options were to buy a 600 foot-pound torque wrench locally for like $400, wait for one to arrive in the mail that's cheaper, or went to Harbor Freight, picked up this. So this takes any 3/4 inch wrench you have and it turns it into a torque wrench. And this was only 60 bucks. So we're gonna try this real quick. Well, we went too far. 408. I'm gonna call that good though. Hopefully that takes care of the front end clunk. And so since I'm also a week older and wiser, I will tell you, if you're wondering about the ride with raising the truck this much, it's about the same. Like the front end, I thought putting those huge springs on there was gonna cause it to be super stiff. It's not at all. It feels exactly the same as before. The rear end might be like a hair stiffer, but it's really, all in all, it's almost exactly the same. All right, y'all ready for the final numbers? Now keep in mind, this is now with 37-inch tires on here, so we're gonna get an extra inch, plus maybe a little bit more because the 35s are worn down. So, front fender, we are at about 42.5 inches. So the rear, we started at 40 3/4, and now we are at 44 3/4. So that's still a lot. That means we went up 4 inches in the rear, including an inch from the tires. I forgot about the inch in the front. That's a lot. So I went back and I looked at the video where I put the leveling kit on because I measured the truck front and rear. And so the front was at 40 1/4, so we lost 1/4 inch over the course of like 4 years there. The back was at 41 1/4. So if you take our original 2.5 inch lift spring for the rear, that was exactly 2.5 inches up. So the thing was, the rear of the truck had sunk down about 1/2 inch. So that's why we're having that problem. I don't know, it's still really high in the back right now. I think those springs need to settle a little bit more. But anyways, I think the truck is looking good. We did have to cut our fender liner and our mud flap here just a little bit. Difficulty level for all this, I'm gonna give it like a 5, and it's not because anything is really complicated, it's just because everything is really heavy, and especially if you're trying to do it by yourself, it's just hard to do. So I will say, if you're gonna do this, it would be a lot easier if you had a friend, especially to help you like put those leaf springs up if you're doing them on the truck, which I meant to mention, I don't remember if I said this before. The way I got those to go together, they give you these longer studs for if you can do all the spring leaves together. So what I did is I put these through first, got all the springs lined up, clamped them down, and then took these out, put the shorter bolts in, and then put the nuts on them. Would I do it again? Yes, but definitely start out with the 1-inch lift in the back and then, you know, go from there. So I am super glad I got the adjustable springs in the back. Can you imagine if I had like done the 3-inch lift on the front, thought the rear needed to go up 2.5 inches, and then ordered like 2.5-inch lift springs that you can adjust, and then we'd just be stuck like 5 inches up in the air. So I think the truck's looking pretty good, but until next time, there's really only one thing left to do, and it's the entire reason we put 37s on here.